The Persian Gulf is not a hospitable body of water for convoy escort operations. It is shallow, warm, and narrowed at its southern end by the Strait of Hormuz into a navigational choke point that generations of naval planners have studied, gamed, and worried about in equal measure. The commercial shipping that transits the Gulf carries approximately 20% of the world's oil through a corridor flanked on one side by a nation that has, at various points in recent history, mined it, fired missiles into it, and seized vessels transiting it. The commercial shipping requires protection. The protection requires ships. The ships require constant attention to a threat environment that has never fully quieted since the tanker war of the 1980s, and that in the current period has acquired new technical dimensions that the tanker war did not have. USS Nicholas, FFG-47, an Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate commissioned in 1984 and currently assigned to the 5th Fleet Area of Responsibility, is providing close escort to a very large crude carrier, making 12 knots through the northern approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. The time is 1607. The VLCC is the Serenity Star, a 300,000-ton Panamanian-flagged tanker carrying approximately 2 million barrels of Saudi crude oil from Ras Tanura to Rotterdam. The Serenity Star is not a military vessel. Her crew of 23 are merchant mariners, doing a job that has become, in the current environment, somewhat more eventful than it was 10 years ago. They are aware that they have a U.S. Navy frigate as escort for the Hormuz transit. They find this reassuring. The reassurance is warranted. USS Nicholas is a Perry-class frigate. This is the moment in the script where the comparison to other ships in this series is directly relevant, because the Perry-class is not an Arleigh Burke and is not trying to be, and understanding the difference is understanding why tonight is interesting. The Perry-class was designed in the 1970s as a low-cost, high-quantity convoy escort, a ship that could be built in the numbers that convoy escort requires without consuming the defense budget that building Arleigh Burkes in those numbers would require. The design philosophy produced a ship that is approximately 135 meters long, displaces 4,100 tons at full load, makes 29 knots maximum, and is built around 2 primary weapons systems: a single Mark 13 guided missile launcher and a single 76mm OTO Malara gun forward. The Mk-13 launcher on this specific hull has been removed, a modification applied to the entire Perry class when the SM-1 standard missile inventory was drawn down, which means USS Nicholas's primary anti-ship and air defense armament is the 76mm gun, the Phalanx CIWS, and the 2 Mark 32 torpedo tubes she carries for the anti-submarine role, plus whatever the embarked MH-60R Seahawk can contribute. She also carries the SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite and the SQS-56 hull-mounted sonar. She is, in the specific vocabulary of naval capability assessment, a competent escort vessel whose design vintage shows in its weapons architecture relative to what the IRGCN has been studying and planning around. The IRGCN's planning document for this operation refers to the Perry class as a target of opportunity, specifically because it lacks the vertical launch system cells that give the Arleigh Burke its layered missile defense. The IRGCN assessment is not wrong about the hardware. What the IRGCN assessment does not adequately weight is the specific operational experience, the prepared crew, the SLQ-32 collection capability, and the MH-60R, and the specific commanding officer who has been studying the IRGCN swarm doctrine with the focused attention of someone who has read every engagement report from every IRGCN encounter in the Gulf over the past 8 years and has formed specific views about how a Perry-class frigate should respond to them. The IRGCN assessment has the hardware picture right. It has the human picture wrong. At 1607, the SLQ-32 detects a coordinated electromagnetic activity on a frequency band associated with IRGCN fast attack craft coordination networks. The detection is faint, the vessels are still at range, but the frequency matches high confidence, and the transmission architecture is consistent with the IRGCN coordination net that has been documented in previous Gulf encounters. The electronic warfare officer reports it to the tactical action officer at 1608. IRGCN coordination on net active, bearing 175, faint, range indeterminate, consistent with previous small craft operation collection. The tactical action officer notes it. He keys the bridge. He keys 5th Fleet simultaneously. Here is the vulnerability window, and it runs from 1608 until approximately 1631, and it is specific to the Perry class in a way that is worth explaining precisely. The MH-60R Seahawk, currently embarked on USS Nicholas, is not on deck and ready to launch. It completed a 3-hour surface surveillance mission at 1544 and is currently undergoing its post-flight maintenance cycle, which includes a mandatory inspection of the main rotor head bearings that the maintenance schedule places at every 3rd flight and that cannot be skipped. The post-flight maintenance cycle will be complete at approximately 1635. The Seahawk is unavailable for launch for 27 minutes from 1608, which is precisely the period during which the EW contact picture is building, and the commanding officer most needs an elevated sensor platform to get ranges and identification on what the SLQ-32 is hearing. Without the Seahawk, USS Nicholas's detection architecture for the incoming threat reduces to the SPS-49 air search radar, the SPS-55 surface search radar, and the SLQ-32. The SPS-55 surface search picture in the Gulf in the late afternoon is challenged by the thermal layer that builds over warm, shallow water after a day of solar heating, a thermal inversion that degrades surface radar performance in the specific frequency range the SPS-55 uses, and that is worse in the Gulf than in most other operating environments. The SPS-55 is painting a picture. The picture is not as clear as it would be at dawn before the solar heating has built the inversion. At 1613, the SPS-55 returns 4 contacts from the south-southwest. Range approximately 16 nautical miles. Speed approximately 38 knots. No AIS. The contacts are at the edge of reliable detection in the current thermal conditions. The tactical action officer has the contact data. He has the EW bearing. He has the geometry. He keys the commanding officer circuit. 4 fast movers, bearing 205, 16 miles, 38 knots, no AIS. EW correlation suggests IRGCN coordination on same bearing. Recommend battle stations. The commanding officer is already in the Combat Information Center. He reviews the picture. He issues the order. Battle stations are manned on USS Nicholas at 1614. The 76mm gun is manned and ready. The phalanx is active. The Mark 32 torpedo tubes are in standby. Not because torpedoes are the relevant weapon for a surface swarm, but because standard battle stations procedure on a Perry class covers all weapon systems. The MH-60R is being prepared for emergency launch with the post-flight maintenance inspection compressed to the minimum essential checks under the emergency launch protocol, which allows the aircraft to be launched with the remaining inspection items deferred to an on-deck pre-flight after landing. This emergency protocol reduces the time to launch from 1635 to approximately 1623. 15 minutes instead of 27. The Seahawk crew has been briefed that they are being launched early and that the pre-flight will be abbreviated. Now let us talk about the Mk-13 launcher that no longer exists and the 76mm gun that does, because this is the specific hardware contrast that the IRGCN's planning document built its confidence around and that the commanding officer's operational preparation has been designed to manage. The 76mm OTO Malera Mark 75 gun on USS Nicholas fires at a rate of 80 rounds per minute. Each round is a 76mm projectile with a range of approximately 16 kilometers against surface targets. It is a capable system against surface contacts at the ranges where a Perry-class frigate wants to address incoming fast boats. The IRGCN's assessment of the Perry class focuses on the absence of the VLS and the associated missile inventory, the SM-2s and SM-6s, that give an Arleigh Burke its layered air defense, as the primary capability gap. This is correct as a missile's assessment. What it underweights is that in a fast boat swarm scenario in the Gulf, the engagement geometry typically resolves to ranges where the 76mm gun is the relevant weapon rather than SM-2, and where the phalanx CIWS provides the terminal defense layer that an Arleigh Burke's SM-2 would have addressed at longer range. The Perry class cannot do what an Arleigh Burke does at 20 miles. At 3 miles, where a Gulf swarm typically arrives, it can do what needs to be done. The commanding officer has thought about this extensively. He has also thought about the fire coordination problem. The 76mm gun covers a single bearing at a time, and a multi-bearing swarm requires either rapid traversing between targets or a defensive maneuver that concentrates the threat onto a single bearing. He has been drilling his gun crew on both. The gun crew has been drilling with the specific intensity of people who have been told clearly that the skills being drilled are likely to matter before the current deployment ends. At 1619, the SPS-55 picture resolves enough to identify the contact cluster with better confidence. 4 contacts. Confirmed high-speed small surface craft, bearing 205, now 11 miles. The EW picture has added information. The coordination net transmission rate has increased, consistent with contacts that are now in their attack approach phase and are receiving more frequent updates from their shore-based command authority. The electronic warfare officer is collecting the surge pattern. The commanding officer reviews the updated picture and makes a decision that the commanding officer of a Perry-class frigate in the Gulf with a temporarily unavailable Seahawk has to make. He maneuvers. USS Nicholas turns 30 degrees to port, which brings the threat bearing from 205 to approximately 235, concentrating the approach on a single cone rather than allowing a spread geometry. This maneuver costs some distance to the VLCC she is escorting, opening the separation from half a mile to approximately 1.5 miles. But it achieves the tactical objective of reducing the multi-bearing problem to a near single-bearing problem. The VLCC is instructed to increase speed to maximum. The Seahawk launches at 1623 on the compressed timeline that the emergency protocol permits. The crew has been briefed during the maintenance interruption on the contact picture and knows exactly what they are launching into. The aircraft climbs to altitude and heads south-southwest toward the contact bearing. The crew has FLIR and the APS-147 surface search radar, and at altitude they will have a surface picture that the ship's SPS-55 cannot achieve in the thermal inversion. At altitude, above the thermal layer, the FLIR will show the contacts clearly. The Seahawk will reach observation range of the contacts at approximately 1628. At 1623.41, the SLQ-32 detects a brief radar emission from the contact bearing. The emission lasts approximately 3 seconds and is matched against the threat library in under 2 seconds. C-14 anti-ship missile fire control radar, consistent with Siraj-class fast attack craft armed with anti-ship missiles. The 3-second activation is consistent with a target ranging sweep. The crew of one of the contacts is ranging on USS Nicholas with their fire control radar. The emission stopped before it could complete a full-track solution, but the ranging sweep itself tells the commanding officer several things. At least one of the 4 contacts is missile-armed. The crew has confirmed the range to the target. They are inside range threshold. The commanding officer notes this at 1624. The contacts are at approximately 9 nautical miles. At 38 knots, 9 nautical miles is approximately 14 minutes. The commanding officer transmits the fire control radar activation to 5th Fleet at 1624.08. He requests authority to engage. The request goes up the chain. The Seahawk reaches observation range at 1628. The FLIR picture arrives on USS Nicholas's combat display simultaneously via data link. 4 contacts, confirmed Siraj class. The lead boat clearly carrying a C-14 launcher on its foredeck. The FLIR imagery is transmitted with the engagement request that is still moving up the chain. At 1629.14, 5th Fleet transmits weapons free authorization. Engaged contacts, meeting hostile criteria under the confirmed fire control radar activation and positive identification as armed IRGCN fast attack craft. The time between request and authorization, 5 minutes and 6 seconds. The contacts are at 7 miles. USS Nicholas's 76mm gun engages the lead element at 16:30:08. The gun is firing at its maximum rate of 80 rounds per minute, which against a fast surface target at 7 miles produces a probability curve that is not immediately definitive, but is not favorable for fiberglass hull construction. The lead boat of the approaching formation, the one that was confirmed by the Seahawk FLIR as missile-armed, takes hits in its forward section and reduces speed sharply at 16:30:31. The fire control radar that activated at 16:23 will not be activating again. The Seahawk engages the second contact with its M240 machine gun at 16:31:12 when the formation's attempt to bracket USS Nicholas on 2 bearings brings the second lead boat into the helicopter's engagement geometry. The M240, at low altitude against a fast boat at close range, is not a precision weapon, but it is a present weapon, and present at the right moment is the thing that matters. The second lead boat turns left, away from the engagement geometry. It does not turn left because of the M240's accuracy. It turns left because the M240 is accurate enough that a fiberglass boat at this range is not a comfortable place to remain. At 16:33, the contact formation has fragmented. 2 boats have reduced speed significantly. 2 boats are altering course, their approach geometry disrupted by the combined effect of the 76mm gun's engagement and the Seahawk's intervention, and the awareness which the IRGCN crews now have that the ship they were approaching is not behaving like a ship that was as limited as the planning document suggested. The phalanx has not fired. The torpedo tubes have not fired. The 76mm gun and the Seahawk have been sufficient for the geometry that existed, which is to say, the commanding officer's preparation was adequate to the threat. At 16:37, the remaining operational contacts are on a southward course at reduced speed, heading back toward the Iranian coast. The formation has not achieved its approach geometry. The VLCC Serenity Star has increased speed and is now 4 miles ahead, clearing the immediate threat area. The commanding officer notes the time and the contact disposition in the deck log. He keys 5th Fleet with the post-engagement status. He assesses the situation. Contained. The assessment is correct.
Let us now address the electronic warfare officer's contribution to this morning, because the intelligence dimension of a Gulf fast boat operation is not contained in the gun and helicopter engagement. It is contained in what the SLQ-32 was doing from 16:08 until the contacts withdrew. The EW collection covers 36 minutes of continuous coordination net monitoring. The collection includes the frequency, signal architecture, and transmission timing of the coordination net from its initial detection at 16:08 through the approach phase and the withdrawal. The surge pattern, the increase in transmission rate during the attack approach, which the EW officer has now documented in 3 separate Gulf fast boat operations, is confirmed again tonight and adds another data point to the behavioral pattern database that the ONI's IRGCN assessment program maintains. The fire control radar activation at 16:23 produced 3 seconds of C-14 fire control radar emission at a range of approximately 6 miles, which is the closest confirmed ranging sweep by a C-14 fire control system against a U.S. Navy vessel yet collected. The 3-second measurement at this range provides a target aspect and range resolution measurement that the existing library entry, built from longer range collections and test data, has not previously had from operational conditions.
The FLIR imagery from the Seahawk documenting the contact's configuration and weapons loadout is packaged with the EW collection. The imagery shows the specific C-14 launcher configuration on the lead boat's foredeck, the physical mounting arrangement, the launcher orientation, and what appears to be a second launcher on the aft deck that the existing Siraj-class configuration assessments had not fully characterized. 2 missile launchers on 1 fast boat. The existing assessment had 1 as the primary configuration. The imagery is flagged for priority review by the IRGCN Surface Warfare Assessment Program. The full collection report runs to 21 pages. It goes to 5th Fleet, to NavCent, to the Office of Naval Intelligence's IRGCN program, and to the LCS and Destroyer program offices that maintain the operational record of Gulf engagements. The 21 pages will be read with specific interest by the people who maintain the Siraj-class threat assessment, because the two-launcher imagery revises the existing configuration model and suggests that the per-boat missile capacity may be double the current threat library entry's primary configuration. This is an operationally significant revision. It changes the salvo capacity calculation for a Siraj-class swarm, which changes the number of intercepts required to address a given formation, which changes the engagement planning for future operations. The Serenity Star continues on her track toward the Strait of Hormuz. She has increased to her maximum speed of 15 knots. The Persian Gulf is wide ahead of her. The USS Nicholas is back on her escort station at 1 mile separation. The gun crew standing down from battle stations but remaining at modified readiness. The Seahawk recovering aboard with approximately 22 minutes of fuel remaining from its compressed timeline launch. The 22 minutes is more than adequate. The crew performs the deferred inspection items on the flight deck before the aircraft is moved to the hangar. The inspection items are clear. The aircraft is serviceable. Now, Iranian state media's approach to Gulf fast boat operations that did not achieve their objectives follows the pattern that has been established across this series: operational confirmation without outcome acknowledgement. IRNA released a statement at 2100 Tehran time, approximately 5 hours after the engagement. The statement described an IRGCN maritime exercise in the northern Persian Gulf, demonstrating the force's operational readiness and commitment to defending Iranian sovereignty in the region's waters. It described the exercise as successful. It noted the presence of American naval vessels in the area. It did not describe the lead boat with the reduced speed from the 76mm engagement. It did not describe the formation's fragmentation at 1633, or the two-launcher imagery that is currently in the Threat Library Update queue. The statement described an exercise. The exercise occurred. The description's relationship to the outcome is the standard gap. The commanding officer completes his engagement report at 1744. The report covers the EW initial detection, the Seahawk emergency launch, the fire control radar activation, and its submission as the basis for the weapons-free request, the gun and helicopter engagement sequence, and the post-engagement contact disposition. The section on the Perry class's engagement architecture is honest. The 76mm gun and phalanx performed within their design parameters. The absence of VLS was not operationally limiting at the engagement geometries that occurred. The engagement would have proceeded differently, with earlier and longer-range missile intercepts, if the ship had been an Arleigh Burke. The outcome was the same. The commanding officer notes both facts. He does not editorialize. The report is the report. He picks up his coffee. It is 1744. The pot was made at 1600, before the EW contact at 1608. The pot has been sitting for 1 hour and 44 minutes. It is the specific kind of cold that coffee gets in a Gulf afternoon when the ambient temperature in the ship's living spaces is 26 degrees Celsius and the coffee was poured into a steel mug. It is not good. He drinks it. The engagement is over. The VLCC is through the threat zone. The Seahawk is serviceable. The 21 pages are in the queue. Today was adequate, which is the correct assessment of a day in which a Perry-class frigate with an unavailable Seahawk and a 76mm gun executed a successful escort in the Gulf. Adequate on this deployment is enough. Bye for now.